I think something that's been really huge in my DJ journey, which I probably didn't expect, but I think the importance of community. And if you have any like hobby, I think one way to really nurture it is to find other people who are interested in the same thing. And I think definitely within the DJ community, through going to like lots of gigs, I was able to meet up with, other Polynesians, other Māori and females that are also doing it. And have become like the blueprint for me. So I think growing up, especially like going into corporate, I think I suppressed a lot of my like Tonganness, and then as I've become into the DJ space, I just feel like I've been only embraced for everything that I've tried to shrink about myself. So it's been a really cool, liberating journey.
Malo e lele, we're back with episode 15 of What's in Your Kete. I'm Taylor, and I'm super hyped to welcome on our guest Nickalee for this episode. Coming from Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, Nickalee has been killing it in the DJ scene for the past year. Tongan and proud, she shares all about her early days watching her dad spin records as the DJ, the importance of diversity on the scene, and plenty more. We're here for it all, so let's find out what's in her kete.
Malole everyone, my name is Nickalee. I come from Tonga. My mum is from a village called Nickalee and my dad comes from Sopo. I was born and raised in Melbourne and then moved to New Zealand when I was about 14, and currently I am an up-and-coming DJ in Tāmaki Makaurau. I've been DJing for about, I think, just over a year now, and it's been just so much fun, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity to come and have a chat today with Taylor.
Thank you for joining on. I wanted to kind of touch on kind of your early days. I mean, you mentioned that you did grow up in Australia and, kind of coming over here. Can you share a little bit around what was it like for you kind of growing up in Oz and then kind of making the shift over here as a teenager? Like, what was some of the kind of cultural differences that you might have seen in terms of whether that's kind of like mainstream or even just within Pasifika communities over there versus over here and kind of things like that?
Oh, that's such a good question. I was born and raised in like the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. Are you familiar with Melbourne at all?
I've not been, so.
I think so Melbourne, I would say compared to like Brisbane and Sydney, I think it has the least number of Polynesians over there. For context, my grandparents, like they were living in Tonga, and my grandpa was a minister, and he managed to go over to Australia and sort of do his ministry over there. So that's how my family ended up there. My dad was born and raised in Melbourne, and then my parents met over in Melbourne too. So I think growing up in Melbourne was quite interesting. I grew up in an area that didn't have like lots of Polynesians at all, and so I think in a way that made me, I think, very curious and want to understand my culture a lot more. And that was actually a huge part of why we moved to New Zealand. My dad really wanted me to be, a lot closer to the culture, but also not, I guess, disadvantage us in our education. So that was sort of like the reason why we made the shift over.
And kind of touching on that, you mentioned you kind of came over as a teenager, particularly for Auckland having a very big Pasifika kind of community. Did you already have family members over here or friends, or people that you knew, or was that kind of having to lay down roots again for you and for your family kind of coming over here from Oz? Was it kind of like a fresh start, or was there like a feeling of like uncertainty with coming to Aotearoa?
Yeah, it was such a culture shock. I distinctly remember, I think my parents took us to the Mangere flea markets and I didn't want to get out of the car, and I was like saying to dad, like, we look so different. I like, this is a genuinely how I felt. I just felt like we stuck out. And my dad was like, hello, you look like everybody else in the market. And I think, yeah, it's really interesting, even though, we're all ethnically the same. I think just growing up in Melbourne, it was just so different. And it took me, I think, a couple of years, but I quickly really came to love New Zealand. And, I went to school here at Epsom Girls, and met so many other Polynesian girls and just felt so embraced by them. So it was like a bit of like a culture first culture shock at first, but definitely like such an easy transition. And I think it would have been easier to go from there to here than to go from New Zealand to Australia or like where I grew up in Melbourne.
Also, with your family that came here, so do you have any siblings, or are you kind of only child, or yeah?
Yeah, I have two other siblings. So I've got, I'm the eldest of three. So I've got my sister Langi and my brother Sione.
When you came over, was it kind of like you kind of leading the pack in terms of helping to get your little brother and sister settled?
My siblings actually transitioned so much better than I did because I was 14 at the time. And so I think when you're at that stage, you're quite settled in your way of life. And so I felt probably the most uprooted from just sort of like I got used to my friend group. My brother, I think, was in primary school. And I think we honestly told him like 2 days before we moved to New Zealand that we were going because he was kind of just like, come along for the ride. So yeah, my siblings transitioned so much easier. I think they really loved like going to, what do you call middle school here? Intermediate. Yeah, they loved going to intermediate, whereas I went straight from like a co-ed high school to an all-girls school. So it was like I think there were so many layers. It wasn't just like culture, but just like, yeah, the schooling was very different. But honestly, love my upbringing. I love it here in New Zealand, and that's obviously why we've been here for so many years.
Kind of looking at after your schooling, where did you end up afterwards in terms of did you go to uni? And if like what did you end up deciding to do after you finished school?
Yeah, so I think for me, I knew quite early on that I wanted a career in business, and I think that's purely just being Tongan, and for me, I really wanted like financial stability. So I studied really hard in high school and got a scholarship to AUT. It was like a business scholarship, and then from there, I studied to become a chartered accountant. So I from there got a role as an auditor in an accounting firm, and then have finally qualified as a chartered accountant. So it's been quite full on.
I also do have to ask in terms of the industry as well. Is there a lot of representation for Polynesian or Pacific people in there, or is it quite Palangi or?
There's definitely not enough of us out there. There are like a handful, I would say, and you meet them. And I'm very blessed, like being in Auckland, that there are like communities that try and like bring us all together. So there's definitely people out there and people trying to, yeah, bring us all together, but are like 100% not enough. I was actually really fortunate. I had someone at work, he's Bengali and he's from Massey. So when he saw me, I almost felt like he took me under his wing. And there were times where, I felt like I wanted to quit. I just, it didn't feel like it aligned with where I wanted to be. And I just felt, yeah, I really struggled, I think, initially. But I was very fortunate to have someone like him to remind me that, you're probably not, I don't think there's very many Tongan girls in the industry, and I think he really pushed me to finish my studies. So definitely representation helps, and having other even people of color is really important.
Switching topics a little bit, I wanted to look at the start of your DJing journey, and particularly, there's one story I'm keen to get your thoughts on about the start of your journey of early last year or early 2024 in particular.
I saw that you had an Insta post maybe around January of last year,
Oh
2024,
man, gosh, you did your research.
kind of looking around your bestie, encouraging you to kind of come out and to kind of share your passion around this space. And how were you feeling, I guess, firstly, like when you started out to put yourself out there in a public platform? And also kind of keen to hear a little bit around the backstory of what did your bestie say to get you to come out?
Yeah, I think a lot of people know, like, especially if you're trying to break through in the industry, it's not enough. I think a lot of us start DJing in our bedrooms and we start sort of like playing at home. And I think the next step to really breaking into playing in clubs is actually putting out content, which if you've never done that before, it's so cringy and honestly just so embarrassing. Um, my best friend has had to put up with me saying that I wanted to DJ for honestly, it must be over a decade now. And I think we got to a point where she was just like, I think in summary, what she was trying to say is very much just like embarrassing yourself and being cringy is really just like the price to entry. Like it's part of the game. You really just got to put yourself out there. She showed me this TikTok, which is in that post, and there's someone on TikTok basically saying that it's really a lot of people don't mind failing in silence, but having to fail in front of a lot of people is quite difficult to do. And I think that's actually what we're most afraid about. Yeah, she's very straight up, and I'm really honest. Like, I'm really grateful that she was just like, she was pretty much just like, come on, bro, like, just got to do it. And so, yeah, I think that night we actually caught up for lunch at a cafe. And like, when I got home, I just turned on my camera and just started mixing. It took me forever. And yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to cut it up. But honestly, I think that post really launched, like, it was the beginning of everything. All the opportunities came to me after that post. So yeah, very grateful for her. I want to shout out her name. Her name's Milavale Tiatia. She's a huge reason why I'm DJing today.
And, in the lead up to that, because I know you said that you had the accounting job full time. Is this something that you've been, working on kind of in secret? Like, did your family and friends know that this was something that you were passionate about, or did you kind of keep it under wraps?
I think to the people that knew me really well, like just like my close circle, I think they all could see it happening. I'm not sure if I mentioned, but dad is also a DJ. So like it's already in the family. It's like, it's already a thing. I think the gap between when I knew I wanted to DJ and actually doing it not full time, sorry, actually doing it regularly, it was probably like the gap is probably about 10 years or so. So I've been wanting to do it for a while.
Your dad being a DJ, is this something that kind of influenced you from day dot? And kind of keen to hear a little bit more around what was some of the music that you grew up listening to. Yeah, what kind of records did your dad spin? And
yeah, dad has definitely like been a huge part of my DJ journey. He's been DJing since I was about 5 years old. And I think from a very young age, I understood like the highs and lows of DJing. So he was playing at like lots of our family events, parties, weddings, even like our church events. And I've seen him like completely rock a dance floor, but then I've also seen the pressure of being a DJ. There was one time at like a church event where at the time he was using CDs, and I think one CD had a scratch in it, and it just all the music just completely stopped, and everyone was looking at him. And so yeah, he just got a lot of you cop a lot of flack, I think, on the one hand. And also too, it can be like quite a bit of a dangerous industry, I think. Like I remember one time there was like we were at a family event and there was some people not like directly close to the family that had come over, and they were drunk and they kind of like knocked all of his gear over. And there was like alcohol everywhere, and it really spooked me. So I've seen it, like sort of witnessed it up front, but his musical style is very broad. I think growing up in Melbourne too, he has a really good background in like pop and sort of like rock and stuff, but he also loves the odd island jam and, reggae and stuff. So I think a lot of his style has influenced my musical style as well.
And that's a nice segue to talking about some of the sounds that you've put out as well. I've kind of deep dived into some of the stuff that you put out, and
Yay.
for our listeners particularly, definitely would recommend you go and check out Nickalee's SoundCloud. A lot of the mixes on there are choice, but I did listen to some of your mixes, and I saw some of your sets on YouTube, but particularly I really digged what you did over at Basement TV.
Oh, cool. That's one of my favorite sets.
Particularly for me, I kind of just wanted to shout out your switch ups that you do in your performances, which is real choice, being able to kind of like flow through like one track to the other, keeping the hype and the energy rolling. And just kind of wanted to ask you, like, what are you thinking in the moment when you're performing your set, and kind of how do you control or manage the crowd with the sound that you're putting out?
I think something I've been a lot more conscious about as I've spent more time DJing is really trying to build a story. I think early on I did a lot of rookie mistakes, and I would like play all my best bangers like right at the beginning, and then you just have like nothing left. And I've gotten more comfortable with like playing mellow stuff. I think you see online lots of people just thrash really like hard stuff straight away. And I've tried to become a lot more comfortable with slower, more mellow stuff and then sort of like working my way up. The element of surprise is also really important. And I think to do that, you can't play too much of one thing. So I'm always trying to think of like, how can I surprise people with, maybe a song that reminds them of like the days that they were growing up. Yeah, I guess that's like sort of how I build my sets.
And one of the things which I was quite interested as well was the song selection that you had with your playlist as well, because I kind of picked up that you seem to have a very broad range of music going from reggaeton to like island jams, hip hop, R&B, and that. And kind of curious to know when you're putting a playlist together or kind of curating, do you have kind of a set lineup of artists that are your go-to, or is it kind of depending on the gig that will determine like what songs or what kind of genres that you play, and just kind of hoping you could share a little bit more around that selection process?
Yeah, I think my sound really depends on like firstly the event, but also like the time slot you play. So if you're playing like earlier on the night, I think a lot of people, you need to kind of like break the ice a little bit. So I tend to move towards very familiar things that just kind of make you feel like, oh yeah, I just want to have a drink, or you kind of walk in and you feel like you're welcome. And I think you can't do that if you're playing like very new stuff. So I tend to kind of go to very sort of like classic bangers if it's like early on. And I think as the night progresses, I think that's where I can be a little bit more experimental. I can like sort of reach for something new, or yeah, even just like pull back a song that was from like a throwback. So
Say compared to like I know you did, I think you did a wedding with the Venezuelan guy, the Venezuelan groom. So kind of compare that to like say your performance at Layers, for instance, and kind of what are the nuances or the differences between those two, for instance.
oh, true, yeah. I think so what you'll compare like for a wedding, that's what I would consider like an open format. And I think in those kind of gigs, you need to be like you're literally just coming there and reading the room. You can't plan so much in terms of like how the night is going to go, so you're really just reading off the vibe. I think in like an event like Layers where you've only got one time slot, sorry, like 1 hour, and I think the people there are a bit more like the demographic is a bit more targeted. Like, it's a certain demographic. People there generally like a certain type of music. And in some way, you can sort of like, yeah, I guess like hone in the genres that you're going to stick to. For that set, I planned it out quite a lot. I practiced a lot. It was like my first ever club set. So that one was a very, I think also a bit of a safe set. And when I say safe, I literally just picked things that I thought I knew would fly. I think if I was to do that set again, I would be a bit more experimental. But yeah, for a wedding one, I only pick songs, especially for weddings, that are firstly family appropriate, but also like everyone has to know it. I think for a wedding, yeah, everyone has to know the song is sort of probably the key difference.
So I'm guessing that there'll probably be no like Lil Jon or like Fetty Wap.
No. Oh, for weddings, I think you can even go there like something I learned off my dad is that you almost need to just sort of make sure, that the oldies and the youngies are young and the really young kids are all taken care of early on in the night. And then when they go home, like that's when you can start playing Little
You won't
John.
turn up.
Yeah.
You kind of looked at, we kind of just mentioned around kind of safe, in your words of safe gigs. Talk me through what your experience on George FM was like. Would you consider that to be kind of a safe platform, or was that kind of very like what was it like for you to come up on radio and to do your set on there? Yeah, how were you feeling? Was it kind of a little more pressure or?
Oh, I was so thrilled to get that George FM set. I think just for people in general, like I think a lot of us have a very broad range of music. Like, of course, I love R&B and hip hop, and I think a lot of the current gigs that I get are because of that and my love for like sort of um, Afro beats and piano. But I think that George FM set just gave me the ability to just play anything I wanted, and I use that as an opportunity to really just showcase other genres that I'm really into that I don't necessarily get to play. So yeah, I think it was just like a really awesome opportunity.
And one thing that I swear this was within the kind of same set, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I did have a chuckle. I think one of your posts was about some of the different suburbs that kind of rep
Right.
different town codes in there, and kind of was running like, what kind of comes to mind when you're kind of doing your anthems for different hoods and that around Auckland?
I put it through ChatGPT because like I have already like what as I was like going through my set, I was like, oh, this feels like Tekka for sure. Um, but I think I also put it through ChatGPT, I think to check my biases because I was like, wait, is this my like the stereotype that I'm thinking of, or is this like, does everyone feel the same about that suburb? And like, sure enough, like some of what I thought and what ChatGPT said is like kind of aligned. But I think it's also to show like I think as a DJ, you're also thinking about like when you're playing music, you've got a group of people in mind. And I think that's kind of like what that piece of content was trying to show is that like I guess that skill set of like being able to match the crowd with the kind of music that you're playing.
Whereabouts in Tāmaki are you based? Like, what's your hood area?
Ooh, so I grew up in Central for most of my life. So I grew up in Epsom. Insane. Like I know every time I tell someone I grew up in Epsom, they kind of like roll their eyes. But my parents, my parents, when we moved from Australia, they really like they did a lot of research and they were like, okay, like Epsom Girl seems like a really good school. Dad put us up, like rented a house in Epsom and just, you know, living off one income, like really fought really hard to try keep us there. So yeah, like Epsom is where I grew up, and then when I got married, we ended up moving to Takapuna. So I know a bit of like I've grown up and I've lived in Taka for a bit, and then currently I'm living out west. So I actually love West Auckland so much. I feel the most at home here. I had this one moment and I like when I first moved here, I was like putting on like my baby carrier on and some lady came up to me just like in the parking lot and was like, "Here, let me like clip that for you." And I just remember being like, "Man, I don't know if there's anywhere else in Auckland where someone would have done that to help me." Like I just feel so at home here.
Kind of looking at your journey so far and all that you've achieved, I would love for you to share with our listeners, like, what's one highlight or what's your main takeaway from your journey in the DJing space up to this point, or what's been like your kind of key takeaway, or just like one thing that kind of stands out to you?
I think something that's been really huge in my DJ journey, which I probably didn't expect, but I think the importance of community. And if you have any like hobby, I think one way to really nurture it is to find other people who are interested in the same thing. And I think definitely within the DJ community, through going to like lots of gigs, I was able to meet up with, other Polynesians, other Māori and females that are also doing it and have become like the blueprint for me. So I think overall, just like how, like I think a key theme that's been really important to me is just representation and sort of being able to identify and see yourself in the person that you're trying to become or like the sort of the goal that you're trying to reach. I think just trying to like I think the best thing you can do is really lean into what makes you you, whatever quirks or whatever you think makes you different. I think growing up, especially like going into corporate, I think I suppressed a lot of my like Tonganness. And then as I've become into the DJ space, I just feel like I've been only embraced for everything that I've tried to shrink about myself. So it's been a really cool, a liberating journey.
And I love the fact from how you describe it seems like you're able to finally kind of flourish now in this space. And wanting to ask you, I guess over the last year particularly, how have you found kind of balancing your passion with DJing with your day job and kind of accounting and business? And do you find yourself kind of, slipping away more towards the DJing side of things, pursuing your passions, or are you still kind of got to pay the bills type mantra as well? Like what's top of mind for you at the
I
moment?
think what's been really, I mean, yeah, it's quite a tough sort of balance because on the one hand, I think not having to worry about bills means that I can sort of turn down things that maybe doesn't align with what I want to do. Whereas I think if I was in DJing full time, I would really have to just, take as many gigs as possible. And probably, honestly, like a lot of the money in DJing is probably in like corporate gigs, which actually isn't the kind of music I necessarily want to play. So I think it's helped me to make decisions that is purely out of like my own passion rather than trying to earn money. And I think I really tip my hat off to the people who are doing it full time and just being able to make it work. I think I'm in a like I'm really fortunate as an accountant. I can sort of scale up and scale down my hours. So I think right now I've sort of like started slowly brought it down, but I still think it's like it flexes a different part of my brain being able to go into the office and like think about numbers. Like I think it's sort of helps in a way. It gives my brain a bit of a break. And then when I go into DJing, I'm like really excited to just dig my head into music. So yeah, it's just different parts of the brain, I get.
It's cool. It kind of sounds like a nice mix of logic and creativity kind
Yeah.
of flowing around. So it's kind of yin and yang in that. You know when you have if you watch those interviews and they have the rappers and they kind of brought on, they're like, oh yeah, kind of tell me like your top three like favorite MCs or whatever.
Hmm.
I've seen that before, but I've never actually had the opportunity to see or ask a DJ who their kind of top three like DJs or like musical influences are, and be keen to throw that to you to kind of
Oh,
push you a little bit on the spot and be like, you know, tell us, me and the listeners in terms of like who's who's influenced you the most in the music space, whether they're like famous or personal in life. Yeah.
I think my top definitely would have to be Papa Jax. She's incredible DJ. And she's actually like one of the first, I think, what would really like surprised me. I think it was quite early on in my career, a DJ career. I think I only put up one post and like I think I had 60 followers, and she actually asked me to be on her lineup. And I just think, yeah, she's been huge, I think, in terms of my journey, and watching her work ethic. And then secondly would have to be Lady Shaka, of course. I love how she brings a bit of Polynesian, music into all of her sets, and she's playing all over the world and still does a siva on the spot. The third one, I would have to say maybe Jero Vandal. I think he's been really, um, I'm not sure if you're across his stuff, but I just used to listen to a lot of stuff before I even became a DJ. So, and then now being in this space and being able to see him go from like, producing lots of music to like doing lots of festivals, I think has been really inspiring.
My uncle and mum particularly were like old hip hop heads, so I grew up on like DJ Premier and like DJ Severe and all of them.
Oh, sick.
So kind of like the old school stuff. And kind of keen to know some more around the technical side of your work. When I think of DJ, I kind of go to the old school kind of vibe of like turntables and
Yeah,
records, but I'm guessing
classic.
I guess it's been a little bit more modern these days. So when you actually get up on stage and do your set, yeah, what's the technical lineup in terms of like, is it a laptop or do you have what equipment do you use? Yeah, when you're
Oh,
on.
good question. Yeah, I think these days when you look at a lot of the like current DJs, they're either playing with a laptop, and I think for the most part, a lot of them are using a system called Serato. And Serato is really advanced in that it has this thing called stems where you can isolate, like we can only play vocals or you can only play instrumentals. And I think that's really huge in when you're trying to mix your set in. It gives you a lot of creative freedom. And then there's DJs who use a USB stick. And that's like the people that use that are typically using like Record Box, which is another system. And for me, like the practicality of being able to go to a night out and just have one little USB stick versus like your, I don't know, $1,000 plus laptop. To me, like it's more of a practical thing. And it also means that, and it's happened to me before where I bring my USB to every gig, and like sometimes someone's like, hey, can someone jump on the deck? Like we just need someone. I think if you're a USB player, it opens you to a lot more opportunities to just sort of play on the fly. So yeah, that's sort of like the key differences.
That's so cool. And I think as well, kind of top of mind for me is you mentioned being able to kind of network a little bit with, and kind of build connections in the space. How is it particularly that you end up going out, and like when you were first starting, was it really just kind of trying to get out to every gig that you could to kind of meet and greet with people in the local community, or were you reaching out through friends to meet up with mutual acquaintances, or
Mm.
yeah, was it all through word of mouth? Just keen to hear a little bit more around that.
Yeah, I think it was word of mouth. I went to one gig. There's an international DJ called Jyoti, and she's just arguably one of the best DJs in the world. She came to New Zealand and had like an all indigenous lineup behind her, and that's kind of how I got put onto like the local scene. I think at my stage of my life, I'm like a mum. All of my friends, like, the lifestyle that they live is so different to the DJ lifestyle. So I really had no one to go with. So I think when I was early on in my DJ career, I just go with my dad to a lot of my gigs. We just have the best fun. Like we kind of just like rock up and we're like, okay, when we're tired, we just go home. So yeah, I started doing that, and I think probably just with age, I've just become a lot more comfortable in going to things by myself. And so if there's any gig that I'm like, oh, I want to know what that DJ sounds like, I'll just turn up. So a lot of times you'll see me out, I'm just like there on my own.
Well, definitely encourage our listeners, especially if you see Nickalee around the way, make sure you go and say hi and show love and all of that. You mentioned that you're a mum as well, and also previously that your dad was a DJ. Do you think that that's something that you might pass along to your kids in terms of love of music, and might even try and encourage them to enter into this space, maybe if when they get a little bit older, of course?
Yeah, 100%. I think DJing's been such a great way, I think, to express myself. And um I think it's quite like reading a book. Like I think it can be for everybody. It's just like finding the right book, or in like this analogy, like finding the kind of music that you want to play. Um, I've had a few people come up to me and like, I know that they want to DJ, but they don't want to, you know, like it's like a my thing and their thing. But I genuinely think everyone should do it. I think it's such a fun way to interact with music and also meet like-minded people. So 100% I would recommend it to my kids. They're already like, I don't realize how much I'm playing a song until they start learning the words to the songs that I'm listening to. So they're so immersed in my music already. It's probably bound to happen.
That's so cool. And I think you mentioned your kids are young ones as well. Do you how do you manage kind of being a mum, but also kind of moving into your DJ journey, as it kind of seems to be growing quite fast now, I think, as well. So
I think like recently, like things have really started picking up. So I think for me, just making sure I carve out time to have quality time with them. Um, but I would say I'm probably the DJ that I am today because of them, and not in spite of them. They've definitely like slowed me down. I was very like, I think before I became a DJ, I was like sort of worked really hard, head down, and I think they helped me to slow down and really just sort of understand like things that I enjoy more. So yeah, they've, although it's not easy to be a mum and do those things, I think they've also helped me be a better DJ as well.
I'm really glad. And kind of segueing into the next question that I had is kind of I wanted to ask a little bit around how you rep your Tongan roots, and I know a big part of that is through family. And I saw as well you had the chance to DJ one of the league games for the Tongan team. And I wanted to ask you kind of your thoughts around that. And I saw you also did a set over at Polyfest as well. So kind of keen to kind of get your thoughts around those two, and also how do you rep your Tongan roots and Matsu Matonga and all of that. So, yeah.
I love playing the odd Tongan jam in my set. As you probably know, it only takes you to go to like Onehunga, what's that road with all the Tongan houses on it? It only takes, Tongans are so passionate about their culture, and like you just have to play one song and they'll embrace, like you don't have to be Tongan, but they'll embrace you in. So I love dropping a Tongan song in my set, and I think that is one way I guess I show um like respect to my roots. Um but I think just in general, just like existing in spaces that there aren't a lot of us, as I guess another way.
And I think as well, you kind of talked around the importance of representation, whether it's in this space or with business or even just in family life and all of that. kind of looking at everything that's led up to where you are now and kind of looking towards, I guess, the near future on what do you hope to achieve, or what kind of goals do you have in place, or what are you hoping to achieve with your DJing, or even just in family life in general? Yeah.
When I first started DJing, I think I had my sights set on, playing at festivals, playing at any like venue with like just a really big audience. But I think a huge part of what I've really enjoyed about DJing is community, and I would really love to contribute to that in some way, shape, or form. I think before the end of the year, I would really love to run my own events. And I think, when you run your own events, you're able to attract a lot of the people that probably don't get looked after so much, just sort of like in the commercial scenes. I would also love to do a bit more like music production. That might be a bit later, but I also like don't want it to be like a chore or anything that I feel like I'm supposed to do. I just want to have fun with it, really. So yeah, run events, put on more shows that more of my people can come to, our people can come to. And yeah, that's pretty much the next 12 months for me.
I saw one of your posts on TikTok, which was really interesting, was kind of just looking around. Um, I guess it was kind of around you having still been on your journey, and some of the things that you kind of picked up in terms of like finding your own community and not kind of being worried around like you know, like how many likes you're getting on a post and things like that, which is really cool. And so kind of looking at that ethos or that kind of mentality for any of our listeners who might be interested in DJing and don't know how to get started in this space, do you have any kind of words of advice or anything that you can kind of share in terms of breaking in?
I think the most important thing is really to have fun with it. I think when you start any hobby, you always think like you need the fanciest gear, and it really isn't the case. I've seen, and it really moved me. I think when I first started DJing, I've always had access to gear because of my dad. But I remember I overheard like some of the boys say that they all chipped in for one controller, and I think it showed me that if you really have the willpower, like you can teach yourself. It really is your drive and not so much, whether you have all the gear. You don't have to be fully ready. I think a really good way to start is just by starting small. And if you start to see that, hey, I'm actually using my controller a lot, like then you can start to think about investing more. That's more from like a equipment point of view. I think from the second thing is like really backing yourself. I think as a Polynesian, humility is, praised a lot, and I think it sometimes gets confused with not like being able to sell yourself online and know what your strengths are and know how to market yourself. So I think being very confident in being like, hey, I'm really excited about this new song that I made. Like, can you guys have a listen? Um, and yeah, like I think it's moving away from self-deprecating sort of attitudes and really just being really proud of your achievements.
I just want to acknowledge everything that you've done in this space, because just as that, I mean, I'm a new fan, but I'm like, yeah, you've done heaps over it's been what, just over a year now, year and a half? Yeah, and
Yeah.
look at all that you've achieved. So I was like, yeah, there's big ups to you. So
Oh,
yeah, so
thank
just wanted
you.
to thank you, also for coming on the podcast. And to kind of close us out, I wanted to give you the space if you wanted to kind of shout out any of your friends or family, and also to share around some of the exciting things that are coming up. I know that you've got a very cool trip coming up soon, but thought I'd throw that over to you, just kind of share with our listeners what's on, what you've got coming up for the
Yeah.
rest of the year.
Oh, that's awesome. I think I might use up this opportunity to shout out the people that first got me my very first gig. I think that's always the hardest part because I think no one wants to take a chance as a promoter on someone that's like brand new that might flop. So I think the very first people that put me on their lineup was Fraser Strickland. He runs Layers. He's actually a family friend of mine, but he has really played a huge part in getting me into my like irregular gigs. Papa Jax, who I mentioned before, and also Banty. She was like, I think she was my first club set. She runs it's a club night called Waka It Up, and it's dance hall, all Afro vibes. She's just a cool person, and I really appreciate all those people who gave me my first shot. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, though.
Thank you for jumping on. I should probably also say, just in terms of if people want to get in touch with you or can follow with what you're doing, do you want to do a quick plug in terms of your platforms?
Woohoo, yeah. Okay, so I think on Instagram, my handle is DJ_Nickalee, and then on TikTok, I believe it's the same. But if in doubt, just search Nickalee, and I'm sure it'll be the only one that pops up.
Malo Alpito, huge thanks to Nickalee for sharing her story with us. Make sure to check out her SoundCloud for all her mixtapes. We'll be back again soon for another episode of What's in Your Kete. Thank you so much for listening.